Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to Misconceptions. And today's misconception is Islam's women, the position of women in Islam, and I guess how people, Muslims and non-Muslims, perceive the woman. So, Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh. So we're talking about the misconceptions about women. We've had so many questions from the audience. I think they might have a couple more, but would you like to add anything?
As we're moving along on here, we're seeing that there could be misconceptions both from Muslim and non-Muslim alike. What I'd like to do now is find if we have any other questions from our brothers here in the audience.
Yeah, I have a question.
Go ahead.
Some people say women worship their husbands.
Okay, now in a previous program, we talked about this subject before.
Yeah, I think
that
we have.
Because there's a verse in the Quran talking about women being devoutly obedient. In parentheses, I've seen it added to their husbands, devoutly obedient to their husbands. And this, of course, was added by a husband. There's no doubt about it, that that's how that came about. So how do we understand that? Well, first of all, it didn't say that. It said because the husband's taking care of her, he's responsible for finances, he's responsible for taking care of all the women in the house, and for this reason, she's devoutly obedient. To who? To Allah. It says Allah gave him the authority, that actually gave him this position, so she's obedient to Allah. It's impossible to be anything else, because in other verses of the Quran it's clear that even though the parents, by the way, who have a bigger due to them from all of us, we have to give parents what is their rightful due. We could never obey a spouse if it was disobedience to Allah. We just can't do that. We can't disobey our parents except if they want us to disobey Allah, right? So that's how that works.
I've heard instances where men have told their women not to go to their sick mother and see their sick mother, and women have said, well, my husband said so, so then I can't go visit my sick mother.
In this case, you go to the very next verse. It says when they're having these kind of difficulties between them, you appoint somebody from both their families and let them mutually work it out, and then both of them have to accept that if they really want to work it out. Because we know that sometimes a man or a woman could really get out there and have a condition which is really odd, really weird. And if that's the case, their other relatives would come in and settle the thing, and you work it out and say, come on, you know, let your wife go to her sick mother. And on the other side, come on, fix the guy's breakfast in the morning the way he wants it. You know, let's work it out.
It has to be a nice balance again, doesn't it?
It says it, and that's absolutely the next verse. It's chapter 4, verse 34, talking about the role of the man and the woman. Then immediately chapter 4, verse 35, how to get resolution if there's any difficulty between the two of them.
Okay, we can direct to the studio audience again. Any other questions regarding the role of women?
Okay, go ahead, brother. Yes.
2 women equal 1 man in business contract. Can you give us a short comment on that?
Okay, now...
Business contracts, and even when witnesses for marriage.
This is in chapter 2 of the Quran, verse 282. It's the largest verse in the entire Quran, and it deals with contractual agreements. It's a very clear business statement here that anytime you're going to do business, write it down and get witnesses so that there's no problem later in the matter. Very clear. But how do we understand the fact that it says that if you're not able to get 2 men, you can get a man and 2 women? So it appears initially that, oh, you're saying that 2 women equal 1 man. But actually, that isn't what's intended at all.
That's the way it comes across.
Yeah, it very much comes across that way because the numbers are there. But if you understand the condition of the women, especially at that time, and throughout history, many times the women are not as familiar with business dealings and contracts as the men might be. And you might be explaining it to her and she's busy with a child or she has other things in her mind and she says, I don't remember that, what was said. And the other one would remind her. And that's what it says in the Quran, that the other one will remind her. That's all. Didn't say that she's dumb, she doesn't understand. But if there is any distraction whatsoever, you've got 3 witnesses now just to be sure. That's all. Not saying one's better than the other. Never was implied that way. And there is historical evidence to the contrary that for sure women are plenty good to do business. Because if we go back to what I said earlier, Khadija, the first wife of the Prophet ﷺ, she was herself one of the best business women maybe in history. There's no doubt about it.
It's very important, Sheikh, that you mentioned that. I didn't know to that detail. It's very important, yeah, because a lot of people do take it as the man is better than the woman, and you need two men.
Huh?
Yeah.
Do we have any other question about it?
I would really like to hear you explain one question which I usually get from non-Muslims is about that Muslim men are forcing the women to cover up and hide. They're demanding from them that they must be covered.
That's a fair question, and actually there is this going on amongst some Muslim men. However, this is not what Islam teaches. Because I've been in homes where when I enter, they want to make sure all the women are hiding in another room, and they never come out. They can't walk through, and they might even tell you, oh, the lady, she needs to pass through. Will you go in another room so she can walk through to go out? You're like, what? What are you talking about? Because at the time of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, there wasn't anything like this, that women, except for his wives. Now his wives were different because these are the mothers of believers. These were survivors after he died, and they were protected from men, unwanted glances at them or advances from them, things like that. But other than that, all the women have always been free to move about, do what they need to do, provided they stay within normal restrictions, because everything in Islam is about rights and limits. Rights and limits. There's always this balance. So in some cases where people get too familiar, it causes problems, jealousies, envy, and unwanted advances. So we don't really want to put anybody in that position. You might say, well, then nothing will happen, but you don't know that. Like the Prophet, peace be upon him, told us never to have a man and a woman alone together, because if a man and a woman are alone together, the devil will be the third. And he will come to people and cause them to have these kind of thoughts. So it's better just to protect yourself. So if a woman needs to go to the grocery store and she's passing through the house, she's not going to go through there improperly dressed. So we do have a dress code, yes, but it is not that she's being forced. She's doing it because she wants to be protected. One of the things I hear women say is, I want to be recognized for my mind, for my talents, not for the shape of my body. And that's what the covering is for. That's what the protection is for. Even when they pray, we put a wall up somewhere so that they can pray behind it. That way they can remove their covering if they would like to. You know, when they're listening to a talk, maybe they have a child, they want to nurse their child. How can they do that? So this is why we erect these partitions, not to bother them, but actually to help them.
Not to necessarily oppress them and put women in a...
Actually, two women came to Islam from this very thing. And what happened was, they came and asked me, why you have this partition here? And so I got to ask them about their religion. Well, for them, they have, their best women are the nuns who absolutely wear almost the same clothing that our good women wear. But they cannot get married. And I asked them, can they have children? They said, no, they can't have children. I said, why? They said, because they can't get married. I said, why can't they get married? They said, because they're married to God. Yeah. I said, whoa, all of them? Whoa, you shouldn't have a problem with us having more than one wife then. Now, what I asked them about, if the best of your women can't get married, the best of your men can't get married, they're priests and preachers and so on, they can't get married. So if the best men and the best women can't get married and have children, that means only the worst of your people are getting married and having children, right?
What kind of society are you going to
So what kind of society, exactly. And so I said, now you're worried about a partition we erected to protect our women, to give them a place that they can relax and nurse their children. And I'm asking you now, why do you have a partition between common sense and your society? Why not let the best of your men and women get married? Do you know what happened? Yeah. I told this story many times when I went back to that same community. It's down in Florida. Do you know what the brothers told me? They said, Sheikh, after you left, both of those women came back, entered Islam, and they're sitting on the other side of the partition right now.
Alhamdulillah. Can we get one more question from the audience before we wrap up? We're nearly out of time, so.
Yes, I have questions.
Okay, go ahead.
Men must beat their women.
Men must beat their women.
Yeah, you get that a lot.
Yeah.
All Muslim men beat their Muslim
okay,
wives.
this is taken from the same verse in chapter 4, verse 34 of the Quran. They translated وَضْرِبُهُنَّ as beating your women. And this is Muslims who mistranslated it. Strike, beat, scourge, all of these words were used. But the most correct opinion on this one, inshallah, God knows best, is that daraba can only mean at the maximum a touching on them, similar to the way a doctor examines a patient. And when they do, it's called percuss, actually. We have it on our website on Islam's Women. If anybody want to go to the website, islamswomen.com. Yeah. Okay. But anyway, this is where a man actually taps his own hand. So even if you went up and said like that, but it's your own hand you hit, but not her. You can't do that. You can't leave a mark on her. You can't slap her face. You can't do it. This is forbidden in Islam. And more than likely, though, it also implies a stronger admonition toward correcting a problem.
Okay, well, we've run out of time once again, unfortunately. We've spoken a lot about women, Islam and women. Thank you very much to the studio audience. Thank you again, Sheikh Estes. Thank you for watching Misconceptions and Islam's Women. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
If you ask me who my prophet is, I will say, haven't you heard? His name is Muhammad. A mercy to the worlds, a mercy to the worlds. If you ask me who my enemy is, I will say, don't you know? If you ask me who my enemy is, he's that same old devil, that same old devil.
In parentheses, I've seen it added to their husbands, devoutly obedient to their husbands. And this, of course, was added by a husband. There's no doubt about it, that that's how that came about. So how do we understand that?
And I guess how people, Muslims and non-Muslims, perceive the woman. So, assalamu alaikum, Sheikh. So we're talking about misconceptions about women. We've had so many questions from the audience. I think they might have a couple more, but would you like to add anything?
As we're moving along on here, we're seeing
Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to Misconceptions. And today's misconception is Islam's women, the position of women in Islam.
Their husbands.
Okay, now in a previous program, we talked about this subject before.
Yeah, I think
that
we have.
Because there's a verse in the Quran talking about women being devoutly obedient, that there could be misconceptions both from Muslim and non-Muslim alike. What I'd like to do now is find if we have any other questions from our brothers here in the audience.
Yeah, I have a question. Some people say women worship